Bore da, good morning and welcome to this Digital Health and Care Wales Extraordinary Programmes Delivery Committee meeting. Colleagues will be aware that DHCW's escalation status went from routine to level 3 enhanced monitoring, specifically around major programmes. Following discussion at the board and subcommittee level, this committee, which has oversight of major programmes, was tasked with providing oversight on our escalation improvement plan. And as a result of that, we've increased the frequency of this meetings for this calendar year through to every 6 weeks. And this is one of the intervening extraordinary meetings. The focus of today's meeting is to review the second phase of our escalation improvement plan, and also to approve the PDC terms of reference. In relation to today's meetings, I would note two things. Firstly, colleagues will have papers, so they might not always be looking directly at the camera. They may be referring to the papers. And in the interest of time, I will ask colleagues to introduce themselves when they ask to present or they ask a question. Let's proceed with the agenda. And the first item is apologies for absence. We have two. Ruth Glazard, our interim chair, is absent, and Marion Wynne-Jones has also got another commitment. In terms of declarations of interest, I've received nothing in advance of the meeting, so I'll just pause and just check that any colleagues might want to raise anything to our attention. No, I think we're good. In which case, we'll move on to the main agenda. The first item is the minutes of the last meeting, both the public and the private abridged. We're being asked to approve these minutes, so could I just check to see if anybody's got any comments, amendments that they might wish to make before we approve the minutes of both the public and the private abridged? No, okay, I think we're good to approve those. If you could make a note of that, please, Belinda. Action items, action log. No, there are no current actions outstanding. So with that, I'll move on to the escalation.
Might not though. Women's.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So I thought somebody was making a comment, but I think it's a bit of background noise. Okay, with that in mind, I'll move on to the item 2.3, which is the escalation status and the improvement plan update. And I'll now invite Chris Darling, our Director of Corporate Affairs, to talk us through the draft plan.
Thank you, David. And apologies if that was me with background noise. I'm just going to work through this slide deck if it's okay. It takes us through current status in terms of the phase 1 plan, and then once we've done that, we'll move on to the phase 2 plan. So I've called it the phase 1 plan just to distinguish between the plan that we put in place originally between May 2025 and the end of March, this March 2026. The milestones all come to an end at the end of this month. And then the phase 2 plan is what we've put together to reflect the fact we're still in escalation and we need to make sure we have an improvement plan moving forward beyond this month. So just briefly to remind committee members where we've got to in terms of delivery. So each of the milestones, I'm going to do this fairly quickly because I want to get into the phase 2 plan, but I think worth just noting where we have got to. So in terms of this section, all the milestones are complete, but you will note in red where we didn't achieve the original milestone date. So target architecture around the future state, we had an extra month to deliver that, and the NHS Wales app Silver roadmap, there was a particular milestone around outpatient appointments, which 6 of the 7 health boards went live a couple of weeks after the original target date of the end of September, and 1 health board was early January, hence that date in red, but it is now complete. And then the integrated care record business case, original target date was the end of January, that's now the end of March, and it's on track to achieve the end of March date. Just briefly going through the other milestones from the phase 1 plan. So you'll recall the joint data controller agreements between us and other NHS bodies in Wales. The target date was July. That was achieved at the end of September. So that didn't quite hit the target date. And then there's 2 where we're off track and haven't completed milestones, and they relate to the LIMS and RISP programs in terms of delivering those to the original timeframes set out in the plan. The last milestones on that page, although isn't complete, wasn't due to be complete until the end of March, and that was around the GP migration, which has hit all its milestone dates in the run up to this point. I'll pause there, David.
Yep. Evan, and then Ron.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. So obviously the red catches the eye on this slide, so I just thought I'd say something briefly on LIMS and RISP. These are the 2 major collaborative diagnostics change programs. The timetables, as they stood in May last year, have come under a quite significant pressure, and they are genuinely collaborative timetables in that, particularly for RISP, individual organisations can change their chosen implementation date. They each have a direct contract with Philips, the system supplier, and working with health board delivery partners. We've done everything that we can to hold on to the timetables that we have, but they have slipped us, and that is why these timetables aren't being hit. It's a Monday morning today. It is Cwmtaf RISP Go Live Day today, so teams have been working across DHW and Cwmtaf flat out through the weekend to get ready for that. That is currently looking on track and going smoothly, but it just goes to show. So the main reason for my comment is that obviously it is disappointing that the timetables have not held as they were planned 9 months ago, but I wouldn't want that to distract from the effort that is being put in by local teams and by DHW support teams to try to do everything that we possibly can to get these very, very complicated programs across the line as promptly as we can. Last week, I had the opportunity to catch up with colleagues from Ireland and Scotland and other 4 nations, and diagnostics implementation programs are notoriously challenging, and there's quite a lot of learning from those countries too about how they always come under pressure and take significant periods to implement successfully. Not that that's any particular comfort, because we're learning that for ourselves here in Wales, but it just goes to show that there's an inherent complexity to programs of this scale with this many partners going in the sort of compressed timetables that we have for these programs. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, thanks for that context. Even Ron?
Thank you, David. My name is Rowan Gardner. I'm an independent member, just adhering to the idea of introducing ourselves as we speak for the first time. I just want to ask the awkward question, sort of as an independent member trying to provide assurance. We're all aware, because I know that we've discussed this many times, around some of the concerns that delays are not communicated in a timely manner. I think that's one of the things that we're all aware of. So even I think very fair comments about how complicated RISP and LIMS are, and indeed we've said on many occasions, running both of those programs concomitantly is not where anyone would choose to be, neither ourselves nor the health boards. But we've got 4 things really: 2 that are off track and 2 that are on track but have yet to be delivered. How confident are we that any risks are being communicated in a timely manner, and that we are taking that particular concern seriously? So I'm asking for a little bit of crystal ball here, but if some of the members of the committee could share some comfort on that, I think that would be useful.
Evan?
Thank you, David. Ivan Evans, Exec Director of Strategy. Apology, I didn't introduce myself when I first commented. I think, Rowan, that's exactly it, right? You are asking for a little bit of crystal ball. From a process perspective and a regular governance perspective, I feel assured that communications are timely. Program boards meet monthly. each programme provides an update into DHEW monthly, to Welsh Government monthly, through 2 different mechanisms and reporting arrangements. LIMS recently has been on a weekly cycle, in fact, since the beginning of the year. So as soon as we are aware, those things are communicated. Welsh Government attends the programme boards too, and chief executives have been reviewing both LIMS and RISP at every monthly meeting of theirs, as have the digital directors. So it's effectively impossible that something would not be fully notified, with less than 2 to 3 weeks notice. I think the challenge is the perception that people, for understandable behavioural reasons, are optimistic and seek to do everything they can to hold a timetable, and so the style is, we're going to make it. No, we're not. And when no, we're not, that can unfold quite rapidly within 2 to 3 weeks. So it's reported immediately. It's been recognised as a risk. But it still then causes some consternation. It's like, well, why has this suddenly emerged in the last couple of weeks? And I think there is something to look at there in terms of our planning, and by our, I mean the whole of the NHS here, not DHEW specifically. Our planning, our ability to predict when things might go off track, and our ability to protect the resources that are needed against all the other competing priorities and pressures within large, complex organisations. So definitely there is room for us all collectively to do better, and I think it is. But I think what leads to the perception, my take on what leads to the perception of there being late stage reporting of issues and concerns is not that there is any delay in the gap between becoming aware of them and making government aware of them, but that all partners have an optimism bias. And all partners want to hold the timetable, knowing how many times it slipped in the past, until it becomes untenable, I suppose. And then there's a certain there's a brittleness in it, I suppose. And that is something that we collectively need to work on, because it's not helpful. When people promise that it will be a certain date, and then 3 weeks before that it slips by a month or 2. But we do see that across many different programs digitally, and again, not unique to DHEW at all. But it's something that definitely we need to work on collectively.
And if I can just reflect that back to you, Ivan, I think there's 2 things there. One is, a kind of cultural desire across all partners to do the very best they can and deliver to time. And then the second are things that are, for very good reasons or reasons that we're not aware of, a health board, chooses to move an implementation date, for example, with RISP, because they've got other competing pressures. And so I think we can't. One thing we can control. The other thing is us flexing to wider system priorities. Thank you.
Okay, Rydian, do you want to come in before we go back to Chris?
Yeah, Rydian Hill, Medical Director. My reflection of these programmes is that there are at least 7 different partners at a local level, health board level. They have not always implemented the data standards necessary that have been and when I mean necessary for a smooth data migration. And when you've got 7 different versions of the truth, sometimes later in the day you find out that organisation X actually has a different way of doing the thing that we all thought everyone was doing the same way. This is something that comes back to bite NHS Wales across all national programmes. Then there's the local capacity point and the prioritisation at a local level to keep the lights on for the thing that they own, as opposed to the national programme that they don't own, despite the fact that they hold local contracts. And the scheduling of their stuff without consideration, and one can understand why, the scheduling of everyone else's stuff. So they might move a date that suits their capacity, their local priorities, their business as usual, and the unintended impact is organisations down the road take the hit, and subsequently then, of course, DHEW take the hit. This is a collective homework measuring exercise. I think that would be
Thank you for that additional context, Rydian. Chris, back to you.
Thanks, David. I'm going to keep working through. There are some comments on Rowan's point I'll come back to if we've got time. But I'll just work through. So next section of the current plan, all milestones completed relating to digital meds and intensive care. The next section, just to say, CANISC, a replacement for the CANISC system was put in place. That was achieved. Stepping back took more time than expected, hence the red. And then the second one, just to say, we are still, that's an end of March date around the linked data sets work. The one just to note on this one is the stakeholder review action plan, where we've got a target date of 90% of actions completed by the end of March. We're on 88% at the moment. There's a couple of actions. One in particular will take us to 90%, and we've got high confidence achieving that by the end of the month. So that, David, is where we've got to. Overall, quite a positive picture, but I think what we've discussed in terms of some of the reflections is people remember where you don't achieve the date you set out to achieve, more so than the fact over 90% of the milestones overall have been achieved, and it dilutes that message. So the feedback, I know committee members are aware because you've seen the letter from Welsh Government around the phase 1 plan, and that we need to focus more on system leadership, engagement and stakeholder perceptions. So this is the kind of the feedback we've taken on board to consider the phase 2 plan, and it picks up Rowan's point about escalation of risk and concerns to the system and how we do that effectively. The escalation criteria hasn't changed, so it's still about delivery of agreed milestones for the 9 as it was, and I'll come on to why it's reducing by 1. We hope. Delivery of 9 milestones for major programs to give confidence that we are delivering against the programs we're in escalation for, to give some confidence around our system leadership and program coordination at a system level, and then that stakeholder relations are improving across the system from a digital health perspective. So the phase 2 plan, we've tried to reduce the number of milestones deliberately for the major programs, and just be clear on delivery of what those milestones are. We've put more emphasis based on the feedback from government on system leadership, stakeholder engagement, and we have also factored in the public accountability meeting feedback that we've had formally from the Cabinet Secretary into drafting the phase 2 plan. So I know the committee have had a development session. So Chair, this is the refined plan based on the discussions that we've previously had. I'm still saying it's a draft plan, but I'm hoping it's more towards a final draft plan than a highly draft plan. So the on the left is the programs we're in escalation for, and then as you step across, you've got the individual milestone or milestones, 1 or 2 per program, the timescale for delivery, and then any relevant notes. So the target architecture is the first one, to submit an investment plan by the end of this month, and then an application strategy to Welsh Government by September. We have amended this slightly from what we had previously. So do you want to comment on this one as a slight change?
So the I'm not sure where I'd add anything in terms of, because I think this is the first time that we're showing the draft in public in this way. So we've looked at the options and how we align to the high level expectations of Welsh Government, as you were describing a couple of slides back. So we're trying to get away from the transactional and into the more thematic to address the underlying concerns that Welsh Government have, which have been a cause for our escalation. The application strategy, I think, is a really important area about the quite complicated applications to state that we have across NHS Wales. Target architecture work is still going very strongly in terms of its engagement, its stakeholder buy-in, the participation of all of the organisations and partners. And I think this application strategy will be a really important milestone for us, informed by the views of a new government from May. So September gives us 3 or 4 months then to respond to any new policy steer or any new policy direction that we might get from a new government.
Thanks, Ivan. David, are you happy if I just keep working through?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the NHS Wales app, the key thing here, I think, is around performance measures for the app based on the work. And this is come from our public accountability meeting feedback, and they ask from government. The approach, I think, in terms of the milestone, reflects the move from programme to product, and its exec lead is moving on to Sam Hall from the end of the month. Sam, anything you want to add to this one?
Thanks, Chris. Sam Hall, Director for Primary Community and Mental Health Digital. So we're working on looking at how we bring this into the product world. So more meaningful, so more meaningful measures, I think, is probably the best way to put it. So it's about it's been very much focused on uptake and numbers using it, which are all really important measures, but actually they don't reflect the importance that the app has and the impact they will actually have on the people using it. So we want more measures around usability, engagement with specific features. So we're working through a range of things to develop that clear performance measure. And we've also been talking with our Welsh Government colleagues about how best we can demonstrate that kind of change back to them. And I think that will be something we will obviously want to share back with this group is exactly what those measures would look like and how we're going to go about measuring them. So, there are some things which are kind of collected digitally with the app, but then there's also a lot more we could do in actually engaging, going out and talking to people about the specific functionality. So we've got a whole range of things as we move, and I'm hopeful that rather than just have those kind of numerical, how many people are ticking up on using the app, we have more depth, so we know how to best develop it in the future.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. The third area is the integrated care record, and this is submitting the draft business case. This is a follow-on from the phase 1 that hasn't been delivered yet, so that's included for completeness. The NDR is around 2 use cases, and we've said the proposed cases we've set out, we haven't nailed them down as definite, but they are 2 that we're exploring, so there's a bit of flexibility.
Okay, Rowan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, David. So what strikes me particularly about this particular one is it's really going back to sort of points made by Rydian around the kind of almost side effects of benefits of moving to NDR. So that if we get this right across all of Wales and everyone is able to build on the back of NDR, we will get greater standardization, we'll get increased data resilience, that will have cyber benefits, etc. So I'm also kind of interested here that there are potential use cases that we can develop, but is there any scope here to also have potential use cases coming from the wider digital professional community in Wales here, and how are we going to drive the NDR, the national bit? It's
Oh, looks like
Rowan's
frozen there, but I can answer I can respond to the
to
the question and to the point. So I think this is another example of how we're trying to get beneath the simple deliverables of the NDR. The program's deliverables are mainly focused on migrating and flowing data into the NDR platform. The more data, the better. From the program perspective, that's what we've built that platform to do. But what matters in terms of perception, particularly by non-technical users, is the things that they can do using that data. And we looked at a few proposed use cases. The second of these, the forecasting dashboard, I think is an example of that local innovation or partnered local national innovation scaling to national. And Erin Bevan and Health Board have led on the development of the forecasting dashboard in a development environment. We've worked very closely with Lloyd Bishop and his team in Erin Bevan. I think that's been demonstrated in the last few months to us. So we've got confidence in what that can do. It uses AI. Both these use AI technologies. They leverage the data that we hold using AI technologies to deliver value to users. Absolutely, Rowan. I think where we'd be heading, where we want to go to, is to enable more of that kind of local innovation that then steps up into nationally deployed live production environments. There is later this week, within a couple of days, I think it's on Wednesday, one of our series of big data events, which has a few hundred people that attend, looking at the data analytics opportunities and the other things. So moving the NDR into a platform on which we can deploy these types of tools is absolutely what we want to do. Last week inside the HCW, we ran a software engineering day, which had 150, I think, attending. Again, looking at ways using the NDR's provided national GitHub enterprise license, again, to deploy AI technologies to explore ways to extract more value from the data that we have. The only thing I'd want to emphasize is that there is a necessary sort of timetable for that. So it's not like an NHS hack day where you aim to come up with an idea, develop something, and there's one of those coming up in a few weeks as well in Cardiff, and then deploy it within 36 hours. What we need to do is to have a wide base to the pyramid with lots of local innovation, and then to absolutely focus on where there's genuine value there, and then do what we need to make sure that those things, when they're deployed to the national scale, are of enterprise grade in terms of security, privacy, resilience, scalability, and a whole bunch of other things. And that does take some time to go through that process.
Okay. Chris, if I could just come in there, I've got a question on the forecasting dashboard. So in terms of going live at the end of the year, is that just with an Erin Bevan? And in terms of what's been developed working with an Erin Bevan, is that applicable to other health boards? So do we know that what we've done for an Erin Bevan could be deployed if other health boards wanted to?
Technically, yes, but only if other health boards put their data into the NDR in the same way that an Erin Bevan have done, and the enhanced value to build on the value, the comparability between different organizations is where you get even more, but that would require all parties to agree to expose their own data to other organizations, if you like, because the National Data Analytics Platform has this concept of health board slices in order to manage the information governance concerns. So at the moment, an Erin Bevan's forecasting dashboard works on the Erin Bevan slice. It's the same platform, it's the same technology. It could be deployed technically on any of the other slices or all of them together, but that requires choices from other partners about their willingness to expose their data at the national level. Okay. Which we're working on, of course, but through wider conversations. Okay.
So just another point, if I may. So I think focus on what we're doing, but I think there's an opportunity to expose what we're doing, if we're not already doing that, to health boards. I think if we could go live with more than one health board by the end of the year, that will be a desirable outcome.
Well, my desire would be to go live with all of them and to have national facilities for all of these things. It's called this is a personal view. Well, it's a DHW view as well, I think, from our long-term strategy. It's called a national data resource for a reason. So our desire would always be to national. I could not agree with you more, David.
Okay, I'm just from experience, it will need quite a bit of effort to achieve that outcome. So we need to take it to them rather than hoping that they come to us for that. Iridian.
slightly challenge that view, David.
Okay.
They're aware it's there. They've got the keys to the box. It is a local choice.
Yeah.
And I think the issue that I have is that given the vast amount of taxpayers' money and money that's distributed to the health boards, I'm surprised it remains a choice. Potentially, through direction, maybe that choice will be removed. That isn't within the gift of DHCW, and it's very hard to measure DHCW on it, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's a very good point, Bridget. I wouldn't disagree with what you said, and it ties in with what I was saying as well, which is, they can come and ask for it, but I think we need probably to do a little bit of pushing to show the benefits that, and I remember, hopefully derive from this dashboard, and to persuade them that whilst they've got a choice, the sensible choice is to take it and use it. Brilliant.
I'd agree, and I think the leverage, David, for this particular tool is both the quality improvement teams at a local level, because it encourages them to validate their data for comparative purposes, and also the directors of finance who will be funding products that compete against this. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, back to you.
Thanks, David. Yeah, and the emphasis on this milestone is on demonstrating value from use cases. So at that point, David, about promoting this, pushing it, and us driving the agenda, I think is really important. I'm going to whip through the next one because it's diagnostics program and essentially delivering limbs and wrists. So I'm not going to ponder on that because we spend a lot of time on that. GP migration. This is one of the programs that we had quarterly milestones in throughout the course of last financial year. Every quarter, it's been on track, bang on where it said it would be, and the milestones continue through to completion this financial year. So if Sam wants to add anything, I'll give it a chance, but it hopefully is straightforward.
Yeah, thanks. It is pretty straightforward. We are on track. Obviously, we're into the more complicated end of this now, which is migrating GPs who didn't choose to leave Vision, but they have been exceptionally good and supportive of the team and of our third-party supplier as well. So, I obviously don't want to jinx anything, but things are going well, and we are still on track for that end of May, when we can then, following that, we can then switch to focus on the EPS work, which is the one underneath.
Yeah, and if you want to say anything on this, Sam, this is just continuing that rollout, which I think committee members will be familiar with, but
yes, it is. It's continuing the rollout in the primary care space, and looking to bring this in significantly sooner than we had originally. I think Ivan probably has got the date that we originally meant to do this, but we are looking to bring this in significantly quicker during the rollout, using the same people and obviously the relationships that we built up during the GP migration to kind of leverage that relationship that we've built to get EPS out and up and running, because this absolutely is something that our GP colleagues cannot wait to have access to. So it's really important that we switch to that as soon as we can after the migrations are finished.
Yeah, I do have the date, Sam. I don't have the numbers, the money. We'll be 10 months earlier than the original intended timetable for EPS deployment, and the program will have been delivered at a seven-figure sum, although I'm not sure how much less than was originally budgeted as well. So we're going to be, in the millions, I think, and under the total originally planned budget, and we'll be 10 months ahead. So that is a result, and a credit to the teams involved in Sam's directorate, in my directorate, across the rest of the HW, and in the health boards, and indeed community pharmacies and GP practices as well. There's so many partners in this very, very complicated program, so it's a real credit.
Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, and just to note, the EPMA milestone is a slightly different approach. So, and this is following a conversation with government colleagues on what was proposed to go into our remit letter. We haven't had the final DHEW remit letter. So I think it's worth me saying this could change, but this is a proposed approach to discuss with Welsh Government around system oversight of the EPMS programme, a slightly different approach. Ivan?
Yeah, if I could just give some context on that. So most of the large collaborative national programs, the money flows to DHEW and then is dispersed onwards into the health boards. That's true of LIMS and RISP and NDR, for example. EPMA is different. The local EPMA programs receive their funding direct from Welsh Government. They have their own local programme boards that are not, if you like, sort of projects underneath the national programme, but they sit alongside the national programme. So the Welsh Government has been managing accountability across each of those individual organisations over the last 2 years or so. What we understand from government is that they're considering bringing the EPMA programme into the same structured format as the other major national collaborative programmes, and that would require a change of governance for the National EPMA Programme Board, because the money would flow through the EPMA programme. In the final stages of EPMA deployment, most of the local programmes are into their final stages now. So that would be a meaningful difference for the National EPMA programme, and that's something that we need to readjust and redefine some of the governance structures that we have, if confirmed through the remit letter and the funding arrangements that come with it.
Thanks, Ivan. The last two, David, there's one around intensive care, which I appreciate is towards the end of this month rather than looking beyond. That is intentional. It's more to complete the audit trail on where we got to the current revised scope and specification. And then it might be this one we do go back to and we agree a revised milestone beyond the end of this month. But I think we're waiting for confirmation of next steps. So hopefully that makes sense. And then
it does, yeah.
The last one, Canisc, because this was around the replacement of the Canisc software, we have proposed, and I have mentioned this to government colleagues, that this is removed as a milestone, i.e. the intention was to develop an alternative that has been done and delivered. So I think this is why I said we're potentially moving from 9 to 8 major programs in escalation, because I think this one has been delivered, and I'm not sure there's value in trying to find something beyond what we've done.
No, I'd agree, Chris. There's no meaningful thing we can do. I think the complication is we need to keep the old system available for retrieval of data if we get subject access request type information, but it's no longer active. It's just there for preserving the historical data record. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'm working with Ridian to make sure we've got a plan to address that as well in the short term. But we will do that anyway, regardless of the escalation milestones. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Fine.
So those are the program milestones. So as from an escalation perspective, to give confidence that these are the programs, this is what we say we'll do, and we will track that we will deliver. There's then two other sections, which I'm going to try and get through quite quickly. One is around program coordination, system oversight, and the second bit is around stakeholder engagement. So the first one, there's only 4 milestones. 2 of them come from our public accountability letter, but are related to kind of system leadership in a program space. So the top one is around benefits management and demonstrating benefits from the programs being delivered. I will just jump down. 10.3 relates to cyber resilience and security, and that is again from the public accountability program. So the letter. So those 2 are included for system leadership impact. 10.2 is implementing the typology work, which committee members will be aware of from the phase 1 plan. So it's getting that and ensuring it's used across the system as we move forward into next financial year. So going from a concept to a playbook and something practical that helps define how programs are run moving forward. And the last proposed milestone or draft milestone, 10.4, this was following a discussion with government colleagues. They suggested it would be good to have an independent assessment of some of the areas that Rowan mentioned earlier, i.e. late escalation of risk, etc., how we're delivering system leadership from a program perspective, and getting an independent view on, are there things we could be doing differently, are there suggestions, or are there wider factors at play impacting that. And I've suggested it's jointly commissioned from DHW and Welsh Government, so it's a report goes to both to us to kind of give that independent assessment on programme delivery.
Oh.
So those are the four programme coordination, and then the last section is the stakeholder perceptions. A few more on this, but I think most of them you'll be familiar with. So there's a plan around OD work with the Welsh Government digital team. There is a session this week, the end of this week. So the start of that is happening, but it's about continuing that and ensuring there's a programme of ongoing engagement and OD with the digital team in government. And then there's a few areas linked to our stakeholder advisory group and the feedback they can give, and then how we measure satisfaction through our products and programs that we're delivering. So they're included within the plan. And then the last point, 11.8, David, is a point from the development session that I've added in around board engagement with government, with the performance and improvement unit.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chris.
So I'm going to...
I've got one comment on that, Chris, if you can bear it. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
The one of the challenges here is this takes account of all the things that we're doing, and good progress is being measured against it. But there are gaps in the system. I think we're aware of them, and they cause a lot of friction in terms of delivering these programs in a timely way. Is there any opportunity here to have a discussion around the corollary of this? So some of the things that get in the way of the system as a whole delivering things on time, and indeed, as we're part of the whole system, can take us out of the knees. So just really a question there. Have we thought about that?
Chris, you're on mute.
I mean, an example being the need to set up a national cyber board. It's strange to me that in the current age we don't have one.
If Chris is having trouble with his mute, maybe I'll sort of come in.
If you can.
Yeah, I can.
Good.
So yeah, I think a few things there. There is a focus here on DHW and its role in the system because it's the DHW Escalation Improvement Plan. But as you say, in some areas, it's very difficult to resolve some of the concerns around DHW's role without addressing the wider system position and perspective. And I think you can see that in the last action on the previous slide, which is around the jointly commissioned independent external assurance. I wouldn't want anybody watching this meeting to think that we don't already have lots of independent assurance. There's a structured, there's a process for how internal audit have reviewed not only individual programs but also our management of programs. We've been very open about that. That's reported through DGNS, through Programs Delivery Committee. Programs Delivery Committee itself is an example of the transparency and the accountability that we've tried to bring in public, using independent members to bring more independent assurance to the way that we deliver programs. But each of those things focuses in on a part, and it's very difficult. In fact, it's impossible for an internal audit of DHW to make recommendations at the system level that would impact upon other organisations, including Welsh Government and all of our many delivery partners. So there is a real challenge there, and I think these two slides show how we're very, very willing, in fact committed, to bringing as much scrutiny and as much support as we can into all of these areas. This whole slide is on the stakeholder advisory group, and we've played all of that out in the open over the last 2 years. The feedback that we've that we've had, our action plan, the recommendations, a stakeholder advisory group. I think to your very last point about other things that are needed in the system, like a cyber board, yes, I would agree that we need a cyber board, although I'd say that we also need to guard prudently appropriately against scope creep for the escalation. You know, there's a temptation to say, oh, and one more thing, oh, and one more thing, and oh, could you do this for me as well? You know, I'm really keen that we come out of the escalated status that we currently have, which is focused on the delivery of major programs, and maintain that focus as sensibly as we can on major programs in order to recover back to a routine monitoring situation, which does not mean that we should not also be progressing work on cyber, for example, in other areas, but through different channels.
Okay, thank you for that, Evan. So I'll draw this to a close. As a committee, we're being asked to note this for assurance. I will just ask Chris, though, what's the next steps in terms of taking this from a draft to the actual plan that we'll take forward?
Thanks, David, and apologies there. Yeah, my teams did freeze. So the plan is I want to have we will have a discussion with government and pick up some of the points that Rowan was just flagging around friction and how do we address some of those. So one of the things, the last slide in the deck just talks about 3 points. One of them is around expectations being shared across all levels of the system, and we know that isn't always the case, and that can be really damaging in terms of creating some of that friction and not then being aligned. The ambition's really strong as a system, but that lack of alignment across the different levels has a huge impact in how things are delivered. That's the conversation I want to have with government in finalising this plan. So, David, we've got IQPD today. We're going to run through this as a draft with them. If they've got feedback, I've incorporated some of the feedback as per that last system oversight recommendation around independent review, and then we'll be hopefully getting to a point, if the committee are comfortable, that we can finalise this with government.
Okay, thank you for that summary, Chris. Let's move on to the last agenda item, which is the Programme Delivery Committee Terms of Reference, and hand back to you for this, Chris.
Thanks, David. Yeah, this is just it's on the agenda for 2 reasons. One, to reflect that at the end of year we need to review the terms of reference, but I think more importantly, it's on to reflect the fact that we are organisationally moving from a target operating model perspective, with emphasis on how we deliver through a product service operating model. And therefore, I am proposing the terms of reference are amended slightly, and I want to take thoughts from committee members. First of all, potentially to change the name from a programmes delivery committee to a portfolio delivery committee. I think that allows us to consider within the portfolio both products and programmes. The acronym also stays the same, which is quite helpful. And then I think within the terms of reference themselves, just make reference to major programs and products as part of the overall DHEW portfolio, and that's the remit of the committee. Because I think trying to be too prescriptive at this stage might hinder us, because we're on a journey where we haven't, completely agreed everything for all programs and products. But I think it's the right thing to do to reflect that the app, for example, the last committee meeting, Sam presented on the move to how she's going to be delivering that. I think the committee still wants reports from the NHS Wales app, but it will be a product report, not a programme report. So I'll open it to questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Anybody got any questions they want to ask, or are we happy to support the changes proposed by Chris? Rowan?
Yeah, I think this is a really good idea, Chris, and I think if nothing else, it will bring into the light the things, the national programs which are complex and are delivered sort of system wide, and products like the app, which, because they are citizen facing, there's kind of something more for DHCW to drive, and I think looking at the different models of how we deliver functionality, we'll be able to expose learnings across the portfolio, whereas leaving it restricted to programs, maybe just gives a partial view of some of the considerations that the organisation is operating and delivering across day to day.
Stephen?
Yeah, just to say that I really welcome this. I think we've needed a programs focus because we've been dealing with a complex portfolio of programs, several of which have been inherited, and it's been a very, very busy 2 years. Several of those major programs are scheduled to run through their closure phases by the end of this calendar year. And 2026 then becomes, we need to start thinking more carefully about what's going to be in the next portfolio, what's in the next wave of programs, how does that balance, what prioritization choices do we make in an informed way. So it's timely as well, that we're looking at typology, we're looking at benefits management and a bunch of other things in this space. So I really welcome the shift to that wider portfolio focus. I think it will bring some challenges we're going to need to work through in terms of bandwidth. Because we've had to be carefully calibrated in terms of how we look at the individual programs that we have, the annual updates and so on. If we're bringing several major products into that space as well, then it's going to be a busy, interesting and really valuable, but busy timetable for us as a committee. But we'll look at that when we get into it. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm very supportive of the move. Picking up on the point you've just made, even, I think the thing that we need to do, in addition to just amending in terms of references, the criteria that we had previously for working out what major programs came to the committee and what didn't. We just need to revisit that in light of the fact that some of those things will be products, and we'll need possibly some additional criteria around which of the products want to surface and which ones we're happy to leave to the normal processes. So, okay, so we've been asked to approve those. I think everybody's in the approval. I'll just check before we formally approve. Yeah, okay, Chris, we have approved those. So I'll now bring this meeting to a close. I've not been notified of any A or B in advance of the meeting. I'll just pause just in case anybody wants to check. No, okay, and I'll just remind colleagues then that our next meeting is on the 30th of April. And I'll just finish off by thanking everyone for attending today, and in particular Rowan, who will be stepping down as an independent member at the end of March, and I'd like to thank her personally for all the support she's given to this committee and to the DG&S committee, which she's been chairing for the last 4 years. So many thanks, Rowan. Okay, and with that, we'll close the meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.